Welcome to this latest edition of Ril Dil Podcast on this 24th of December 2000. Quinn discussing the world of sports and pop culture. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at William Gerald or go to my Instagram page at Ril Gerald Quinn. Happy Christmas Eve to everybody out there. Hope you're getting a busy upcoming week of sports led by begin late afternoon. You saw New Orleans able to get out, edge out the Pittsburgh Steelers 31-28 in a game that if you're Pittsburgh Steelers, you have to be frankly kicking yourself. I thought Pittsburgh outplayed New Orleans in the game. I thought Pittsburgh should have won the game, but they had some bad turnovers down Pittsburgh, and of course you had the infamous 4th and 5 fake punt call by Mike Tomlin, which to me just made absolutely no sense. You're gonna afford. There's one thing to fake punt at 4th and 2, 4th and 3. It's gonna be you almost gonna be hard pressed to pick up 5 yards, 5 yards in that situation. And again, if you fake punt at midfield against that offense, you might as well gift wrap and basically hand 7 points to the New Orleans Saints. There's no way that they're not going to be able, that they're not going to score on your defense on a short field at that point in the game. Again, it was just a bad call by Mike Tomlin, something that just made zero sense to me. And I'm not going to say it cost Pittsburgh the game, but it because they still had opportunities to win the game. But it was just one of those calls that you just don't make. We know Tomlin is going to have a hard to also, of course, take care of business against Cincinnati, which you certainly expect him to do. But again, it's not impossible that Cleveland beats Baltimore. Cleveland's playing well right now. Mayfield's going to be the rookie of the year. I think he's going to get it over Saquon Barkley. They always lean towards the quarterback anyway in those awards, whether it be rookie of the year or MVP. And Cleveland, listen, Cleveland has something to play for. They like Greg Williams. That should be a tough game, a very close game in Week 17 with Baltimore. But a Pittsburgh team to me that's loaded with talent should not be in this position to begin with. Pittsburgh has as much talent as any team in the league. Pittsburgh should have been a team that should have been contending for a Super Bowl. There's no way in Week 17 that Pittsburgh to this, but it has, and they find themselves again needing some help from one of out of all teams that you would ask want help from. You'd be dependent on the Cleveland Browns, but that is the case coming into a Week 17. As far as the Saints goes, the Saints of course clinch home field throughout. They are the odds-on favorite to get to the Super Bowl out of the NFC. I'm not going to put them as prohibited favorites. I think the Saints have some flaws. I don't think the Saints are unbeatable by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think that there's any team in the league right now that's unbeatable. There's no dominant team. That's why these playoffs, especially in the AFC, should be wild and all over the place. I expect that the Saints will be playing in it. Will be at worst playing in the NFC Championship. I think that is almost a given as far as I'm concerned. But getting to the Super Bowl, the Saints certainly could be picked off in the conference championship. Though they find themselves in a great position. They are lifetime. They are in the Drew Brees, Sean Payton era. They are undefeated at home in the playoffs. So, and then, remember in 2009, the Saints got to the Super Bowl with the 2009 NFC champion. So you have Pittsburgh on the brink of elimination. Where again, a team that was at one point 7-2-1 and was rolling. Now they cannot get out their own way. Now you have people talking about Le'Veon Bell, and y'all need to really pick a narrative when it comes to Le'Veon Bell. Because when Pittsburgh is winning, no one talks about Le'Veon Bell. They talk about how great James Conner is. They talk about, Antonio Brown. They talk about the defense improving. Ben Roethlisberger playing like a Hall of Fame quarterback. You're not even thinking about Le'Veon Bell. As soon as the team has a losing streak or starts playing poorly, Le'Veon Bell becomes the greatest thing since Walter Payton and Jim Brown. You guys need to just pick a narrative on Le'Veon Bell. Pittsburgh is not suspect coaching decisions at times with the 2 point convert, with going for two, with some of his decisions in general, not challenging the Mike Thomas catch that Bell is not to me. I don't haven't thought about Le'Veon Bell as far as whether or not Pittsburgh in terms of having an effect on Pittsburgh winning or losing games. I just don't think he's a major factor. I don't think they need Le'Veon Bell. And to me, that will not be the reason. Getting a big win over Kansas City, 38-31 at home. Seattle has been one of the best stories in football this season. I actually, if I had a vote, Pete Carroll would be my coach of the year without question. He's done a tremendous job rebuilding that team, especially that defense. Remember, no Legion of Boom, no Michael Bennett. Now they still have guys, KJ Wright, Bobby Wagner, guys like that. But for the most part, it is a revamped defense. They right now they have completely went back to being, 3 yards in a cloud of dust. They're going to run the ball. Last night they ran the ball 43 times for over 200 yards. Kansas City can't stop the run if their lives depended on it. Um, that's the thing that bothers me about Kansas City, a team that in late January, cannot stop the run. That is a big, that is something you don't want to be able, that is something that could come back to bite them in the playoffs. I just, with Kansas City, I just see a team that lacks a little mental toughness. Like they don't win those tough games, those closely contested games where it gets physical, where they have to make a play. Um, Again, I'm not even going to count the Los Angeles Ram game with standing. That was on the road. That was a wild game. But games like this against Seattle, against an offensive team Seattle should not be able to put 38 points on the board against Kansas City. So that is a red flag right then and there. That a team like Kansas City, a team like Seattle, that is not a big offensive team, puts 38 points on the board against you, and you know what they're going to do. They're going to run the football. You know they're going to run the football. Yet you still can't stop it. Russell Wilson made enough plays. Doug Baldwin had a nice game, and a great win for Seattle. Seattle now clinches a playoff berth. They will be in the playoffs. They will be in the playoffs this year. They've had a tremendous season, have played well, really ever since that Green Bay game in early November. Seattle has been rolling and almost beat the Rams. Almost beat the Rams. Played the Rams close twice. So again, Seattle will be a very interesting team going to the playoffs. I don't like Seattle going to the playoffs again. I don't think that level, that style of offense, unless you have a dominant defense. They don't have a defense like the Ravens have. I think they're going to need to score some points. Um, they're going to need to open up things a bit. But this is how they've been winning, so I expect them to stick with this style moving forward. But again, Pete Carroll has done a tremendous job with this team. A lot of people wanted to run Pete Carroll out of the building at the beginning of this year, saying that their time was up, that the culture was toxic. A lot of negative things were said about him. Now Pete Carroll basically has gotten the last laugh with how this team has performed because this team is not supposed to be this good. This team was not supposed to be this good this year. I didn't expect them to make the playoffs at all. I didn't expect them. I thought they could finish last or second to last in that division. I thought Arizona would be terrible. But I thought definitely the Rams and San Francisco would finish ahead of them. But Pete Carroll done a masterful job with this team. Philadelphia keeps their playoff hopes alive, 32-30 over the Houston Texans. Super Bowl Foles. That's what you're going to be hearing. Super Bowl Foles. Nick Foles had a tremendous game, 471 yards passing, 4 touchdown passes, had the one pick. That was his only it was a poor pass. That was his only bad play of the really bad read of the game. Give Philadelphia a lot of credit. Houston is a very good team. Deshaun Watson is a friend. We know Deshaun Watson's a franchise type quarterback. We know that defensive line is great with Clowney and Watt and Merciless. But Philadelphia was able to hang on, kept themselves, they able to hang on, put themselves in a position where they can kick a game with a field goal, and that was the case as they now will go into week 17 needing some help. They need Minnesota to lose, and they need to defeat the Washington football team down in Landover, which should be no trouble. There'll be about 40,000 Eagle fans down in D.C. or Landover, Maryland. So that part of it won't. I don't expect much resistance from Washington, even playing a spoiler role. So they're going to need again. Philadelphia's going to need help from Minnesota. Minnesota to get into the playoffs. But right now, Philadelphia at 8-7 is still very much alive to defend their championship with some help from the Minnesota Vikings. Baltimore had probably the most impressive win of the week. StubHub Stadium. which is, of course, we know is a bandbox, about 27,000 people. This was a dominant defensive performance from start to finish from Baltimore. Baltimore held the Chargers under 200 yards total offense. They rivers off a couple of times and really shut down the Chargers running game. This was, again, a great defensive performance. The Chargers, they also were able to run, again, they also were able to run the football. Lamar Jackson, ever since he took over as quarterback, the team is lost. That is a physical team. That is a defensive team that can go toe to toe with any offense. We saw them against Kansas City. We've seen them against New Orleans. Hold both those teams under 30 points, which is a miracle in itself. But that team, we know that team could play defense. They have great defensive players up and down the board. They're very well coached. Like Seattle, they are going to run the football. They don't care about, high scoring, all this razzle dazzle and all this nonsense, all this offense, all this, up tempo offense that had taken the NFL by storm over the course of the majority of the season, which has kind of slowed down now. If you notice, defenses have picked up. You've seen the Bears, Seattle, Baltimore. Those defenses have picked up, and scoring has kind of slowed down. Going to next week, controlling their own destiny. All they need to do is while the Ravens kept, churning along, running the football, and that was a big time performance on Saturday night over the Chargers. I still like the Chargers a lot. That to me, that was not about what the Chargers didn't do as much as it was about what Baltimore did do. Baltimore had to have the game. Chargers did not have to have the game. Chargers had already clinched a playoff berth. They were just fighting for home field. And again, I think not having home field advantage for the Chargers is a good thing. That stadium, no one is intimidated by that stadium. And if you notice, the Chargers have played their best football on the road. So I don't think home field advantage is a big deal for the Los Angeles Chargers. Um, I don't expect Kansas City to lose next week, so the Chargers will need to win and have Kansas City lose to have any chance get home field. They'll probably be locked into that number five spot more than likely, and I think that's fine if they're playing again. They possibly could be playing Baltimore again. Now that could I would like them against Houston. Stadium is not intimidating whatsoever. Again, 27,000 at Pittsburgh, wins at Kansas City. So we'll see what happens with that. Of course, you had Saturday night as well. You had Tennessee over Washington, 25 with the loss and the Philadelphia win. Washington, they're going to finish the season either 8-8 or 7-9. Probably what they were going into the season, which was about close to being a 500 team. Now, those of you who are going to wonder what could have been had Alex Smith not gotten injured, I would say at their highest, at their best, maybe they win the division and lose in the first round. This was not a big time team. This was not a team that was going to contend in the NFC with all not as good. I don't think they're even as good as Seattle, to be honest with you. So they're just not as Dallas. They're not as good as some of those teams in the NFC. The major question about Washington will be what they do in the draft. They have very limited cap space to make any moves. Alex Smith's career could be over. Who knows when he'll come back? They're gonna have to go. They're gonna hit the jackpot in the draft, and that's all there is to it. I would not bring back Jay Gruden whatsoever. I would not bring back Greg Minuski. I would just totally clean house from the coaching standpoint, and which makes it ironic that Washington releases DJ Swearinger for comments that he made about coaches who may not even be coaching next year. So again, I would clean house from that standpoint. This roster needs to be upgraded with draft picks, not free agents. Maybe you luck out and get a free agent, a veteran on the cheap that can help you. But Washington's going to have all their draft picks this year. I believe they're gonna have four supplemental draft picks, so they are gonna have to hit the jackpot in the draft. And it's very much possible to turn your team around if you draft correctly in 1 year. Ask New Orleans with Kamara, and they had 4 or 5 draft picks in the 2017 draft, and now they won a Super Bowl favorite. So you can turn Marcus Lattimore, Kamara, and they had also the safety Williams. So you can turn around your team in the draft if you make the right choices. The problem for Washington is, you had Bruce Allen running the show, be tied to Alex Smith. They're going to have, again, they are stuck with Alex Smith's contract they're on the hook for Alex Smith's bonus money. So that gives them limitations on what they can do at the quarterback position. And maybe they can get Nick Foles on the cheap. Like maybe Nick Foles is not going to demand a lot of money based on age and based on the fact that he hasn't been a successful starting quarterback. But maybe not. There's always one team that's going to overpay to get a guy like Nick Foles or even a guy like Jameis Winston who could be available. So they're going to be limited. They're going to be very limited options at quarterback. As far as Josh Johnson, I can't knock Josh Johnson for his play. Those interceptions, the last interception was a Hail Mary. The game was over. But the first one, like he made a bad read, overthrew the ball. Other than that, he took him a couple. He had a couple drives, couple of nice drives, long drives that one resulted in a touchdown, the other resulted in a field goal. I can't knock a guy who has not played, who has been basically was unemployed a couple weeks ago. So I didn't have high expectations with Josh Johnson to begin with. He did get him a victory last week, made a couple of plays with his legs against Tennessee. You want to knock anyone about the Tennessee loss. You have to knock one, the lack of discipline, which goes to the heart of Jay Gruden in terms of this is one of the most penalized teams in the league. I think they're the third most penalized team in the league. I think Kansas City's number one. That's a lack of discipline. That points directly towards coaching. Um, and the defense. All those injuries they have, or the majority of those injuries that Washington has, are on offense. Quarterback, receivers, the offensive line, Jordan Reed, and what have you. The majority of their injuries are on offense. That defense has been relatively healthy. That defense to allow Tennessee, after you are up 16-12, to allow Tennessee to go all the way down the field with Blaine Gabbert, and with average receivers at best, and knowing what they're going to do is want to run the football with Derrick Henry. It's a defense again that I don't want to hear anything about how good their defense has been or how much pressure's been on their defense or the defense wilting because how bad the offense has been. The defense came up small in the Tennessee game. That's all there is to it. They came up small. They couldn't get the keys. They couldn't get that stop that could have possibly won them the game. So the majority of the injuries have been on offense. The defense could not get the job done against a average, at best, average Tennessee offense. So Washington season is in essence over. They're gonna have to start looking at who they want to coach their team moving forward. In terms of drafting, it absolutely would not bring back Jay Gruden or Greg Minuski to lead this team in terms of coaching and in terms of defensive coordinator. Again, I think this team needs to hit it big in the draft. As far as the quarterback goes, you're gonna have to sign a cheap veteran quarterback, guys, and I don't know who else. Right? Go listen. You could start Colt McCoy next season. There's nothing in the draft as far as quarterback goes. Maybe a guy in terms of a guy who would be a future franchise quarterback. That guy doesn't exist in the draft. I think they will probably draft a quarterback somewhere in the third or fourth round. But they have a lot of positions. They have a lot of holes offensively. Um, they're gonna have to add to that secondary defensively. They're gonna you expect them to add to that. So they're gonna have to hit it big in the draft moving forward. Releasing DJ Swearinger, I'm not gonna make a big deal about it. I don't think they should have released him. After comments being critical of Greg Minuski, that's something that should have been private and just fine him, just hit him with a fine and that's it. I don't think he should. And Swearinger is a pretty good player and had 1 year left on his contract. Unless they had. It sounds to me that they probably going to cut him anyway after the season was over. So that team is in flux. That team is in flux moving forward. They are clearly, when you look at the future of the rest and compare them to the rest of the teams in the division, the Giants still have Saquon Barkley and Odell Beckham and Alex Ogletree, and and Eli's played well enough to earn another year. So they're looking in Sterling Shepard. So they have some young talent. and Dallas has a young, talented defense, and at worst a borderline franchise quarterback. So Washington by far has the bleakest future. Clinch their division. New England wins the AFC East for the 10th straight year, which is just remarkable when you think about it. Also, just goes to show you how weak that division is. When you look at the AFC East, uh, give me the franchise quarterback outside Tom Brady in the AFC East over the last 10 to 15 years. So that is one of the reasons, one of the major reasons, excuse me, one of the major reasons why New England has been so dominant. Still 10 straight divisions. Um, there's still 10 straight divisions. Again, Dallas clinched as we expected over Tampa. Jameis Winston to be on a team. Jameis Winston can still play at a high level. He is a friend. He is a guy that you want in the quarterback. And week 17 coming up, week 17, the playoff picture is pretty much clear. New Orleans, because New Orleans is going to be the number one seed. The Rams and Bears, they will be number two. If the Rams lose and the Bears win, the Bears will be number two. Rams will be number three. Has the loss has a chance at the number two spot and a outside chance at the number one spot if Kansas City loses. Remember, Kansas City, New England has the tiebreaker over Kansas City, so that was a big loss for Kansas City last night. That was a big loss for Kansas City, losing to um, losing to Seattle. Because Kansas City right now, as I look at the standings here, 10-5. Kansas City, yes, Kansas City's at 11-4. New England's at 10-5. So New England uh, has a tiebreak over Kansas City based on the regular season. New England could be number one, could clinch home field if Kansas City loses. Kansas City wins, Kansas City clinches home field. New England with a win would clinch at worst a number two seed, and Houston needs a New England loss and a win to clinch that number two seed. Baltimore wins. Baltimore can be no higher than the number four. Um, can be no higher than number four. The Chargers are either locked into a number five seed or locked into a to number five. And likely they could jump depending on the Kansas City result and the Chargers win. The Chargers could jump to number one, but more than likely, with a Kansas City win, the Chargers will be at number five. We talked about, of course, Indianapolis and Tennessee. Indianapolis and Tennessee. Indianapolis, the winner of that game the winner of the Indianapolis Tennessee game will be in the playoffs. The loser will go home. Pittsburgh needs Baltimore to lose and a victory to get in the playoffs. So they're gonna still need some help. So when you look at the NFL season as we enter at week 17, again, no dominant team. I mentioned this last week. There was a time where you had the Rams, Saints, Kansas City, and New England have chinks in the armor. If you're the Chicago Bears, if you are Indianapolis, if you are Houston, you feel like if you're Pittsburgh, if we get in the playoffs, we can take any one of those teams out. If you're Baltimore, you feel good about where you're at right now. So there are a number of these teams, defensive minded, running the football, Seattle veteran quarterbacks who should feel good about their chances moving forward in the playoffs. Indianapolis, you have Andrew Luck. In Houston, you have Deshaun Watson. Chicago has a great defense. Seattle, you have a great running game in Russell Wilson. You should feel good about it tonight. So it is a perfect time to enjoy some Christmas Eve festivities in terms of, maybe you open one gift. I don't know how you drink some little eggnog. Tonight, you don't have to worry about sports at all tonight. Unless something, has some breaking news unless some breaking news drops, because the Monday Night Football game will be awful. As far as the NBA goes, listen, if you're LeBron James, sometimes you just gotta kick back and just shut up. I mean, you can't. LeBron James is as intelligent as full savage with that's not a LeBron James move. So, of course, he meant nothing by it. But the bottom line is, you gotta be smarter than that if you're LeBron James. This guy, again, this is the guy who is like a chess master when it comes to calculating his basketball as well as his business moves. So, you just gotta be smarter. We know Anthony Davis is coming to the Lakers. Of course, they played Friday night. They had dinner. Anthony Davis then comes out on Yahoo the following morning and says he's going to take money over legacy. So, you can tell it's going to come out to the Lakers or Boston in terms of who will be behind the guys on your team. So Boston has to wait until Kyrie Irving is a outright free agent at the end of the season to sign him. Lakers have to get that deal done before the trade deadline. Lakers cannot allow Boston to become a major allow Boston to become a major competitor with them in the offseason, because bottom line is Boston has just as many, if not more, assets in terms of players and draft picks to compete with the Lakers to compete and to throw at New Orleans. So the Lakers are going to get a deal done. It has to be done before February. It has to be done as soon as possible. They're going to get Anthony Davis. Chris Paul goes down again with a hamstring injury. He could be out a couple 2 to 4 weeks. Um, Listen, he's 33 years old. He's been physically breaking down for years, even when he was in his 20s. And with that contract moving forward, there's nothing that they can do about that contract moving forward. Of course, tomorrow you have the NBA kind of taking center stage with 5 games. Now again, I'm looking at the schedule now. I think it's a waste, in my opinion, to have Milwaukee. I'm looking at the schedule: Oklahoma City, Houston at 30. Los Angeles Golden State prime time makes all the sense in the world. Portland the 5:30 range. I don't want Greek Freak playing at noon. So maybe you put the Knicks. First of all, the Knicks should not be. I guess because it's in New York, but the Knicks shouldn't be on this list, on this docket. Maybe you put Oklahoma with somebody else at noon. I want Greek Freak playing at 3 o'clock or 5 o'clock. I want Greek Freak playing at 3 o'clock more. I can understand Boston, Philadelphia, but again, you have Milwaukee, New York, Oklahoma City, Houston, Philadelphia at Boston, Lakers, Golden State, Portland at Utah. So that'll be a nice docket of games as really the NBA season now starts to take somewhat center stage as the NFL wants the majority of the teams. I know the Big Ten has, but the ACC and some other conference stage come. Kentucky over in the worst way, having a big time non-conference win going to conference play. North Carolina, I wouldn't make too much of it. North Carolina's played a brutal non-conference schedule. Already played Gonzaga, Michigan. They lost to Michigan, lose to Kentucky, beat Gonzaga. So they are now. They will have Davison, which can be tricky, but not that they should be able to handle them as they will enter a brutal stretch of games in the ACC. The ACC is just rugged this year. You have 4 teams that could go to the Final Four in the ACC with Duke, North Carolina, Florida State, and Virginia. Not to mention NC State, which is not a Final Four team, but just upset Arizona State a couple of days ago. So the ACC is loaded this year. Um, Duke is number one again in the Associated Press poll, but nice wins for Kentucky and Arizona State. Couple of things I want to get talk about. So you had who has been suspended since. Here's what I'm upset about. Number one, this referee has had a history of doing of these situations where he's had there I call them racist moments. So I'm not surprised by him. He is who he is. But for the team, for the coaches of that young man not to stand up and say either you're going to allow him to put a head wrap on without, or we're just going to walk away, is a disgrace. I give the young man credit for putting his team before himself, though would have no problem with that decision. But for his team and for his coach to allow that without just saying we're going to walk away, to me is an absolute disgrace. That the referee should never be able to officiate a match ever again, in a way, and not standing up for that young man who clearly put the team ahead of himself. So that's first of all. Second thing is Josh Gordon. walks away. We clearly know Josh Gordon has mental illness issues. He walked away from the Patriots knowing that what was coming. Um, this was not a situation where I blame Josh Gordon for wasting the opportunity or blowing his chance of making millions. This guy has mental health issues, and it's clear that he has mental health issues. He's used drugs, whether it be weed or football, because he realizes he has a problem and he realizes he has mental health problems. So I applaud him from that standpoint. I know he was receiving some criticism, which was ignorant to say the least, about him wasting the opportunity. Did not waste the opportunity. He took a chance, took this opportunity to realize that there are things in his life. There are people, especially around the holiday season, who are killing themselves left and right. Okay, commit left and right. Look at Pete Davidson with the situation that happened with him a couple weeks ago. So I applaud Josh Gordon. Hopefully he can play football again. But if he doesn't play football again and gets his head and gets his self together, then that's definitely without question be able to play football through getting cut or old age. But his mental health has to be taken care of, and I give him all the credit in the world for dealing with that. So you have tomorrow. You have the 5 NBA games for Christmas. Um, Bowl games will be reconvened on Wednesday. How and speaking of that, how about you had a classic and a demolishing? How about Houston giving up 70 points to Army? First of all, shout out to Army for winning 11 games. Their coach has done a tremendous job with that program. But for Houston just to completely fall apart and give up 70 points, you had a great game with Memphis and Wake Forest. Wake Forest winning a classic game. So you had a nice start to the bowl, a decent start to the bowl season. You'll have you'll have a bunch. These bowl games are going to come fast and furious after Wednesday. The college football playoff game will be Saturday night. We're going to do at least one podcast before the new year with Alabama, Oklahoma, Clemson, and Notre Dame, and also preview Week 17 in the NFL, like, entertainment, pop culture, and what have you. So that depends. That's a maybe, but we're certainly going to do a podcast on the 30th. So be stay tuned for that. The Real Deal Podcast, telling it like it is with no apologies. Thanks for listening.